Did you know that 14.3 million Nigerians use drugs without prescription? Did you also know that those involved are between the ages of 15 and 64, and that 1 in every 4 of this age group is a woman? Now, those statistics are contained in a report made public in January this year by the EU. The report was derived from the survey conducted by the United Nations Office Drugs and Crime, that's UNODC, National Bureau of Statistics, and Center for Research and Information on Substance Abuse, CRESA. In a nutshell, drug abuse is simply, for the layman, when you take or consume a drug without doctor's prescription. Basically, that is what it is. But most worrisome are those who use drugs and become dependent on drug use. And again, the EU reports estimates about 3 million Nigerians are drug dependent and cannot access help. Now, in 2018 alone, the EU report states that 4.6 million Nigerians use prescribed drugs in such a way that is not medically prescribed. In response to drugs and related crimes, the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, came up with the National Action Plan on Drug Control, and that was in 1999. Now, between 2015 and 2019, National Drug Control Master Plan, that's the third in the series of deliberately thought out plan to address drug problem in Nigeria, of course, came up. But despite all these, Nigeria is still rated as an originator and drug consumer nation. Abused drugs have become diverse. The high-risk ones include marijuana or Indian hemp, Igbo, there's so many names, heroin, tramadol, codeine. Drug use habits is reported among younger people, women who resort to potent mixtures of several drug substances, and you hear of gutter water, cocktail of drugs, including mixture of codeine, tramadol, smoking lizard parts, and dung, as well as sniffing glue, petrol sewage, and urine inhalants. Yes. Now, the Presidential Advisory Committee on the Elimination of Drug Abuse was inaugurated by President Muhammadu Buhari and is the latest in efforts by Nigerian government to control drug use and eliminate abuse. The committee recently submitted its report to the President. So the question is, are we winning this war? How are we approaching it? And are we engaging the right target? That's our focus this week on Late Edition. I am Claire Adelabu Abdul Razak. Join me again. Otumba Lanre Ikpemisho is an erudite legal practitioner. He served as a legal advisor for Nigeria Postal Service, a legal assistant with the ICPC, and a board member of the EFCC, NDLEA, and NESTRA. He's described as a very humble man, and you can see from his disposition, a man without any baggage throughout his tenure as the Director General of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA. He's said to have discharged his duties at the agency with vigor and tenacity. His efforts paid off when sometime Nigeria was said to have been delisted from drug major list, and that was after almost 2 decades. He was a governorship aspirant in the 2015 general election. Otumba Lanre Ikpemisho is a member of the Presidential Advisory Committee on the Elimination of Drug Abuse, PASEDA. My second guest, Hamisu Lawan, is a graduate of Bayero University, Kano. He's serving now as the NDLEA commander in charge of Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja. And in his 27 years of service, Hamisu Lawan has worked in all the geopolitical zones of the country. He's a member of the Security Institute, Abuja, an alumnus of Marshall Center, that's European Center for Security Studies, Germany. He also has competencies in international relations, strategic studies, and law enforcement. So, gentlemen, I'd like to welcome both of you to Late Edition this week.
Thank you very much.
Let's start from the top. what exactly are we fighting? Are we fighting use of drugs without prescription, or are we fighting those who use these drugs and are dependent on them? Let me start from the former chairman.
Thank you very much for all those beautiful words. I don't know how you put them together. Thank you very much. I'm encouraged. Um, if you use the word drugs, you'll be leaving out a lot of things that don't come in as drugs. So we prefer that we remain consistent with substance abuse.
Okay.
Because you mentioned the dungs and all that. So let's start with that. Substance abuse will be more all-embracing. Now, the user is the victim, and we're not fighting the user at all. We're encouraging the user to say all is not over for you. You have a problem, it can be resolved. And we have a lot of cases that have been resolved. People who thought their life have been in shreds and that the life was all over and not worth living. They've been rehabilitated and they are living their lives once again. However, for the suppliers, there is a war on ground for them, and the tempo is going to increase. The ferocity is going to be unbearable for them. They are going to lose all that they have worked for at the expense of innocent people's children. A lot of homes, they don't sleep at night. They remain awake crying. You see a boy carrying a knife running after the mother, will threaten the mother and sleep with the mother. A lot of bizarre things are happening behind the walls. No country at all in the world can have the level of prevalence we have, and everybody goes to bed and hope that you just wake up and the problem is solved. It doesn't happen. It requires consistent, concerted effort of all.
Okay, so we're not fighting victims of substance use.
We're not fighting them at all.
You are looking at the roots, that's the supply chain.
The suppliers.
Okay, Haji Hamisu, how do we differentiate between a victim who is a criminal, and a victim who is not, and who are you exactly fighting?
Well, already by the analogy or by the wordings you are used, a criminal is certainly a criminal, but for somebody that is a victim, he is like every other person that suffers some sort of sickness. Remember in your opening words, you used the word prescription drugs. By the law and by policy, every responsible government is expected to make drugs, be it prescription, in as long as it's medicinal, affordable, and available. Now, where the crisis is when the chain from the supplier to the user, the person that actually needed it, is kind of corrupted. Corrupted in the sense that there is a kind of derailment. That is where the crisis is. But there is a deliberate effort by all governments to make medicine, including the prescription drugs. We are not talking about the illicit, outright illicit drugs, prescription drugs. Because for now, it did appear to us, our record has shown that the crisis Nigeria is facing is more of the prescription drugs than even the outright illicit drugs. The illicit, that's talking about the cannabis, perhaps the heroin, and the cocaine. But what we are now facing is like the opiate-based drugs. Codeine, tramadol, these are all opiates. They are derivatives of opium, which is almost like the same thing with heroin.
You know, my head is getting big. So many terms to come to term with. Otumba mentioned substance abuse. Or comparison. You have now mentioned, so please let us just lay it bare. What is drug abuse?
In your opening remarks, you did capture a number of substances ordinarily it could be drugs by way of action. That's the likely effect of what somebody will pass through if he comes into contact with it. If viewers are listening carefully, they heard of sniffing toilets. This is substance abuse. Sniffing
Gutter water.
lizard dung. These are substance abuse. They are not really drugs. But the user is trying to achieve a common or a perceived goal, a feeling that he is high. And unfortunately, sniffing gutter, sniffing toilet, taking or sniffing a lizard dung will give the desired effect, like what if somebody take retinol or heroin, because what he will end up having is hallucination, feeling high. So that is why you had these days, instead of saying drugs, it will be more encompassing to now use the word substance abuse.
You know, Tumba, I'm just imagining how is it if the age bracket that the EU mentioned, which you have also corroborated, for maybe between 15 and 60, 64 and all that, how do these young ones get to know the kind of effect they get from mere sniffing? No, I mean, ordinarily, no one would think that you go and sniff gutter, you'll get that. So how do they get to know?
Okay, let me just add one more substance, and that is the bone of a dead body that has become powder. They sniff it and get the same effect. Now, I asked experts, why powdered bone of a dead body? They say yes, the same thing that seasoning cubes contain that makes people get high when they dissolve it in drinks. Now, why are they looking for all these options? Because what they normally use regularly is becoming difficult to come by. That is the problem with substance abuse. It's behavioral. You will look for it at all costs. That is the problem.
How do they know? I was watching a video, in particular, on the ground cover done by, the BBC on codeine.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, I mean, I could go to the, pharmacy shop and buy, cough syrup containing codeine. How do these people know that codeine and mixed with a particular soft drink gives a particular desired effect?
Yeah, these musicians joke with it, that's chemistry and all that. The chemistry students know the content of these other things that make you get high. And like you were asking, it is whatever you take with the intention of altering the natural function of this central nervous system or the brain, that will qualify as a drug of abuse. Whatever you take, hoping to alter maybe your sleep. There was a place maybe to give us a tiny cup of tea like that. I just discovered that 3 days you won't be able to sleep. So what type of tea is this? They said they use it to study. These are all drugs.
They use it to study?
Yeah, they say it keeps you awake. You use it to study. You start like that, then after your exam, you discover that you can no longer go to sleep at the right time. So your sleep becomes distorted. So that's why if you test most of the children on drugs, you find like 4 or 5 substances in them. They take some, it gets them high, they become too high and uncomfortable, they take another to get low. So that's why you see like 4 different items in them. However, the totality of all this is what we refer to as drug abuse. And you have asked why the age of 15 and 64. It's just for the ease of statistics. You could get more than 64. You could get as low as 11 years. I've seen some. Yes. That's why we think that programs like this will enlighten parents. We're too distant from these children. These children are too smart for when we were growing up. Don't go there was don't go there when we were growing up. Don't go there is don't try. But these children, you have to explain further. They will need further explanations from you. And that's why it's good to make them your best friend. And these are the simple ways out. Then take the family unit more serious. This whole thing revolves around distorted family values.
So let me take you to, you're a member of the Presidential Advisory Committee.
Sure.
And you've come up with your reports, but without, preempting what your report is. I know it's not yet, public as such, but how can you evaluate Nigeria's standing on the Global Drug Trafficking Index today?
Yeah,
Drug use and trafficking.
You see, we are concerned because, gradually we transited from transit country to drug using country. And we tend to do things in excess here. And that's why we're all worried that it may not be stopping here. And that's why the government says that in all the troubles, security trouble that you have seen, that if we're able to remove drug out of it, that we'll all be at peace. And it is true. Find out from people who have been kidnapped. Now they tell them, bring 20 million naira and 20 boxes of tramadol. Yes, because it's now difficult to come by the way it was before. So it is that tackling drug problem takes care of a lot of issues. Out of school children, he just doesn't feel any reason why he should go to school for as long as he's able to lay his hand on his drugs of abuse. Again, overstretched medical system, medical facilities. It's rested on this drug issue. So we should all take it as serious, because it's really very serious. That's why federal government inaugurated PASEDA, to look at what have we gone wrong, that with all the agencies set up to manage and help us out, that we're having upsurge.
Precisely. In fact, that's the objective of this program. We want to look at what is it that we have done rightly in the past that got us out of the list, and why have we relapsed? But let me turn to Lawan. You are at the airport.
Yeah.
Just give us a picture of what your experience is like with regards to drug use and abuse.
Coming back to your word when you say what is the position of Nigeria in the global drug index. First, let's take out the local situation. That's the challenge of prescription drugs. Because these are drugs that are actually manufactured in some cases within the country. Now, going back to the issue of heroin, cocaine, and in some cases methamphetamine, or some new entrants of other drugs like the LSD, which we really don't have here in the country.
And what is that?
It's an amphetamine. Now, what we have over the years, the nature and the rate of seizures of drugs across the entry points of Nigeria, especially the grade A drugs, cocaine, heroin, which was then the cause of Nigeria being delisted in the major list of US, has receded, prompting us gladly for the country to pull out of the major list. Now, before that, you ask a question. In spite of all these efforts, why the crisis, why it did appear as if the drug situation is escalating? Now, the problem is people are venturing, are experimenting new other substances. Tramadol wasn't really pronounced in Nigeria.
Precisely.
What we do know then was ICD as an amphetamine. But now, with the efforts of control agencies suppressing the importation of some of these drugs, there is an experimentation of new substances. Tramadol now come to limelight. We have the issue of the codeine-based cough syrups, because somebody somewhere attempted and experienced it and experimented it, and then he feels that it's equally deriving the same effects. And then again, if I should dovetail into what you asked earlier, advocacy itself could be good, but at the same time, it has a counter effect. Sweet codeine, for instance, For somebody that is already on it, if you allow a child of 13, the crisis adolescent period, to just sit there and watch without the parents interpreting the implication of what it is intended to convey, the message is likely going to lose. Because every child in most cases, without proper guide, is being challenged. So the tendency for experimenting, trying to explore what could this be, is there. So the bottom line is we have quite too much parents, but we are lacking in parenting.
Who are usually the high risk users? And I don't know if Otumba can give us a sense of, the extent of drug use, maybe by gender. We've seen, okay, they said 1 in every 4 is a woman. Can you give us an idea what that is like?
Yeah, it's actually frightening. You know the role of the women in the society. The moment you destroy that's the root of the family.
Yes.
That is the manager of the home. That is the manager of the society. So the moment you successfully open that area to drugs, we're all in trouble. That is the first person, the mother of the house, the first person to notice that something is wrong. A girl was coming for assistance here to get treatments, and the mother bought drugs worth 40,000 naira for her, a little girl. So as far as the mother was concerned, she loved the girl. She doesn't want the girl to suffer.
So why are women now, doing drugs more than the men?
The pressure is much on the women now, and that's why families are encouraged to come together and face their challenges. This period will be over. The government is trying to facilitate activities that will generate ease of life for everybody. But if you allow your family to be destroyed by drugs, by the time the average Nigerian is heaving a sigh of relief, you may just be at the beginning of your calamity. Because drug is something that takes a long time for you to be able to receive good treatment that will make the family to come back to normal. So that's why I encourage that. You cannot say because you lack a job, you don't have job, you have been unemployed for 6 years, you destroy your life. Opportunities are coming up. You are not going to be qualified, not ever again, if you continue on drugs. That's what the first thing you are going to have to consider is, what if I'm invited today? Because most of these government agencies now, you are going to have to pass a drug test to be able to enter. Yes, even universities, you are going to have to pass a drug test. A situation where all the girls tested in a particular university, which you know is all over the internet, 100% positive. And about 80-something% of the boys tested, we cannot accept that and be comfortable. Everybody must see this as an emergency in our situation, and I'm happy the government is seeing it like that.
You talked about, of course, a woman being, the custodian of the family,
Yeah.
and how, drug is affecting that.
Yeah.
And that brings me to my next question, just before we go on a short break. Some people, live in an environment that predisposes them to, doing drugs, but really do not do so. So, would you say, substance abuse or drug abuse is culturally induced? No.
Somehow, because I kept on saying this sometimes back at the advent of democracy in Nigeria. The northern part of the country, we have quite a number of very massive societal changes, policy-wise, but unfortunately, ownership of the societal change wasn't from the grassroots. So, when people are running away or are compelled to leave the beer parlor, are compelled to leave some of the black spots, they ended up going back to the recluse, back to their communities, because the system has not addressed their crisis. 1999, 2000, there were massive changes in almost the whole of northern Nigeria. And that was then why too much noise afterward that there is heavy drug abuse in that particular area. Because now people look for options. They can access alcohol and they can move around. But unfortunately, the predisposing factors that pushed them into that were still there. So what they did was to look for an option. They now get codeine, they get retinol that doesn't smell, that is not noticed, and they can be accessed everywhere. That was what happened. Now, going backward to the issue of a woman. Women and children are quite vulnerable group. A man, once faced with pressure, has the liberty of easing himself out through a number of processes, leaving the house, getting engaged somewhere, but the lady is home. She has pride. She tends to stomach so many things. And what set in now is depression. And once there is depression, the tendency of lack of sleep is there. So what happened? They tried to see what could be an option. It may even start from the hospital or quasi-hospital, because not necessarily going to the clinic. Somebody that appeared to be a medic might decide to prescribe something that will assist in mitigating the crisis. Unfortunately, once she got to realize that that is the remedy, she get hooked onto it. That is where we have most problem of abuse of tranquilizers.
Okay.
Or the benzodiazepines.
Okay, Hamiso, let me pause you for a while. When we come back, I'll just take the question to Otumba Lanre Ikpimisho. Of course, they've done extensive, work on in their community. We'll look at whether there are geographically defined factors that predispose certain parts of the country to particular drug use and substance. We'll be right back. You're watching Late Edition. This week we're looking at Nigeria's drug war and of course response to it. We'll be right back.
This is NTA News 24 broadcasting from Abuja. You can watch us anywhere, anytime on the following platforms.
Start Times, Channel 101, Freak TV, Channel 703, GSTV, Channel 419, and Go TV, Channel 46.
For more information, log on to our website, www.nta.ng, or join us on our social media handles, Twitter at NTA News 24, Facebook at NTA News 24.
For comments, suggestions and inquiries, send an email to news24@nta.gov.ng or call us on the following numbers.
NTA News 24.
News and more news.
All right, welcome back. I have with me former Director General of NDLEA, Otumba Lanre Ikpimisho. I also have the Commander of NDLEA at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja, Hamisu Lawan. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me on Late Edition this week. Otumba, let me ask you, there was the report contained in the EU showed that certain drugs are abused the more in certain parts of the country. And that's what I'm going to ask. Are there geographically defined predisposing factors for this behavior?
Yeah, that could be very true. Because you see, we have more of cannabis in Nigeria, and that's over 10 million on cannabis. Over 10 million on cannabis. Not a significant percentage on cocaine and heroin. So that's why I agree with you that it could be, because that is what the drug of abuse that is available in your area. That is what you know. It's not because of geography itself, but because of what your area can produce. The cannabis is almost becoming like vegetable around. Like you said earlier, in a certain school, you may not have more than 3-5 people that used to take cannabis those days, and they are known. 3, 4, 5. Now, if we are not very careful, you discover that if you are not taking, you'll be in the minority, and that's very dangerous. That's very dangerous. You go to schools now, you see everybody clubbing a bottle and drinking the contents for a whole day. What is inside? Is it Coke you drink a whole day? Or Fanta? School needs to be interested in what are you drinking? That you clutch a bottle for a whole day? We want to know the contents. You know?
So he mentioned the North. There was a time we thought the North was, more at risk in terms of drug and substance abuse. But in our conversation just before we came on set, you mentioned about the percentage in Lagos.
Yeah, Lagos is the highest in the country now. That's it. That's no doubt about that. In the North was in shock. That's why the noise was much. You know, it's not something you will see at all. Somebody staggering or somebody torturing. It was very rare. So the alarm was much. But actually, the users are more in the South. Southwest.
Let me add.
The prevalence in Kano now is about 12%.
Yeah.
In Lagos, it's huge, 2.3 million. You know, and that is not to lay blame, but just for awareness that maybe you need to check your house too, because after 2.3 million, maybe it's getting closer than you thought. Because, like he said, the drugs now, before you wait until your eyes are dilated. If you are going to wait until somebody's eyes is dilated before you suspect whether he's taking drugs, then there's a big problem. Because before it gets there, maybe like 3 years of use. So that's why we say technology has advanced beyond waiting for smell or anything. You say, my friend, come, we need to see my doctor. Yeah, I need to know what is happening. And you subject yourself and subject him, your son. We need to go for tests. It's not whether you are bad or not at all. This is the area of trying to clear these children, so that you start thinking that, oh, he must be a criminal. It's not because he's a criminal at all. It's just that the misfortune of this generation with the technology advancement in communication, where what is taken in California today now, if you want it on the internet, you can get it. What's the latest drug of abuse? So it is what is pervading now, and we should try to approach it differently. Rather than those days, you have to smoke cigarette, wow, you just give him a dead little slap. You are just wasting your time. Behavioral something, he can drink without, he can hide away from you and be taking it, you won't know.
Let me give you a pause. Yes,
Now,
what's responsible for this behavior?
The previous reports, like you said, from the North, is an isolated assessment that has to do more with certain substances. But what we have recently, the report you are quoting is from UNODC and ICRISAT. And ICRISAT equally add up alcohol as part of substance of abuse. So sadly, if you now measure, you have a holistic approach to the issue of the drug situation, inclusive alcohol intake, perhaps that will now, the issue of some kind of setting and cultural background will now come to play. Perhaps that explains why the new dynamics in Lagos overtaking some part of the North. But if you are talking of, because the citation then was that the rate of codeine specifically being abused and tramadol in the North is quite high. But the report now is more holistic, giving reference to a number of and variety of substances. So under that context, environment, culture has a role to play on that.
Okay, Otumba, I said there was a time Nigeria got out of the list, major list.
Yes.
What did we do right then?
Yeah, what we did was we were more open. We were more open. The American government wanted to know what we were doing. Can they join our operation? Say, well, you are welcome. UK Special Crimes, they said, we want to join and see how you do your operation. You are welcome. And when they came, they saw that without the kind of technology that they had, that we were really bringing water out of the rocks. They couldn't believe the honesty. They couldn't believe the hard work of the officers. And they were using their private extra code to buy some certain stuff copiers and all that for the officers. They were so impressed and said, "Is this what you do? Because we're standing here together. How did you know that this? How did you profile this one that now produced these drugs?" You know, the drug war is universal. So when he sees that the setting he has in his own place to be able to make this arrest does not exist, then how do you do it? So he gave us additional credits. We were open. That was all that we did. Be open in what you are doing. Because there are some of these drugs that you see there, that you seize and you are dancing, that is being monitored from the source all the way. They wanted to see who is behind it. What will be your reaction? That's all. If not, right from the one that came from Chile that time, right from Chile, everybody was watching how it was moving. So be open in what you are doing, because what you are doing for me, but behind me, as far as I'm concerned, is against me. That's the way the world sees it. Be open. If you have challenges, we have challenges back in our country, but we are open with our challenges. That's just it. Transparency in operation, transparency in accountability.
Accountability.
Yes.
Lawan.
Yes, like what the former DG said, the major list then was a kind of an assessment of Nigeria's efforts in the counter-narcotics effort across the globe, not necessarily in Nigeria. And our level of partnership with the global community. What were we doing? And like he said, for you to be certified, for me and you to work together, I must see in you being transparent and upright, and then being committed. So these were the principles that attracted Nigeria into a number of, not only the United States, but quite a number of other countries that decide to work with the country in countering narcotics. After all, countering narcotics is just not for one country, because it's a transnational crime. You have something that originates from far Chile having a consequence in Switzerland, because perhaps a Nigerian is involved, traffic the drugs from Chile through Brazil to Nigeria on transit, and then back to Zurich in Europe, or perhaps to Schiphol in Amsterdam. So what they were trying to do is to assess our system and see that the system is working, is transparent and open. But that is not to tell you again that it's relapsing. No.
Because I was going to ask you, how is it, or how is NDLEA now dealing with the issue, and what are the outcomes?
No, the certification issue is a different game altogether. It's not relapsing, because up to this moment, going through the statistics of using Nigeria as a territory in trafficking cocaine, heroin, is receding.
It's receding,
Yeah, it's receding. But where we are having an upsurge
is the substance?
Is the prescription drugs.
The illicit drugs.
The illicit. That is an area where we have a kind of emerging point between the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency and the National Agency for Food Drug Control.
So how are you dealing with this prescription drug abuse?
If you remember in your opening remarks, you gave reference to a very fundamental, very important instrument, the National Drug Control Master Plan. In that master plan, responsibilities were apportioned, responsibility assigned to different segments of government agencies. I think what is lacking is proper coordination in terms of actualizing the concepts as envisaged in the master plan. Yes, we wanted to make drugs available and affordable, but we have the quantity we required of ephedrine, for instance. We have a crisis where we have in circulation of ephedrine of about 8,000 kilograms. But what we really wanted is less than 2,000 kilograms, for instance. The report is before INCB that Nigeria imported. But it's not here, because the report, those that are manufacturing the drugs had to put in a report. that they've actually exported so item of this quantity to so country. But in our own, the actual requirement is far less than that. What happened? There is diversion. There is diversion of that precursor chemical.
Yeah.
And that is where we're having crisis.
Yeah.
And that was where we now notice an increase springing up of methamphetamine factories. Methamphetamine is now a grade A drugs like cocaine and heroin.
Atumba, yes,
Now being manufactured in Nigeria.
Yes, Atumba, is that not an indication that strategies needs to change?
Yeah, that's what PASEDA is all about. The president said, study the organs that are on ground to respond, find out what was supposed to be done that was not done, give us lasting solutions that are immediately implementable. That is what is before His Excellency Mr. President, and he has told us that this is his priority. And what I want Nigerians to do is to believe in the political will of the president to turn things around. He said this is a problem he will not leave behind. He will not abandon Nigerian children. He will not abandon even the street children that are being used for drugs now. He said he will not abandon Almajiri, and we'll trust him. He's coming up with policies that will radically change this whole thing.
Yes, it would also appear, I'm still staying with you before Lawan comes in, that, as some right advocates have also hinted, that drug law now, as we have it now in policy, seem to target more of enforcement and penalization, rather than looking at, treatment, enlightenment, and of course, prevention.
We stereotype a lot. Even when your country is making so much effort, you still be talking of about 5 years back. Things have changed. Before now, there were no dedicated government facilities to address this drug issue. We have over 16 facilities now in the country.
But what kind of facilities? Is it treatment?
Yeah, treatment centers
and
now.
Counseling centers?
Yes. A lot is going on now to address this issue. Because like I told you, this government does not live in the moon. They live among the people. The people are crying, and they are listening, they are hearing them. Even today, we're in IG's office still strategizing how to get more facilities to work so that you don't need to leave the city where you are resident to be able to get access treatment. And we're looking at the facilities that are being closed down. Government realizes that there is a vacuum that was being filled by these people. It's just that we have to have standards, acceptable standards of treatment. Not treatment that will create more injuries. And government is looking at all this holistically.
I asked this because it was not too long ago that the Minister of Health, raised this alarm about lack of, treatment and counseling facilities, especially those that target women. And that's why we're having, this, issue, as a public health issue.
The women will have challenges. We've interviewed women that said, no, I would rather die with this. I don't want to go to any facility. It's because of the stigmatization. The family is going to have to realize that for as long as you lock up the child, you are not helping. Let the child come up. There are facilities to help. And government is going to increase these facilities. We realize that we have less than 200 what do they call them now? Psycho doctors, what do they call them?
Psychiatrists.
Less than 200 for the whole country. That's a challenge. So we realize that we need more experts too. And government is looking at this holistically.
Through your committee?
Yeah, the recommendations are there. And those who are to act on it, they're already working on the reports. And that's why I said it's going to be all-encompassing. This is the first time that the whole thing is being studied, why, what went wrong, when, who. Okay. So that everything is put on the president's table, that if you address this, Nigeria will begin to limp out of the brinks.
Okay, Lawan, you were going to...
Yeah, well, professionally, NDLA is expected to render counseling services to drug abuse patients. Now, hitherto, like you said, it's like there is a very big, huge gap as to you've identified a character that really need help. But unfortunately, what you have or what you wanted to recommend is not readily available. So I think by my understanding, even the closure of what we notice these days is not really enough.
The closure of the borders, you mean?
Not the border, no. The
The
closure
facilities.
of some of these so-called correctional centers.
Okay.
Yeah, because so many countries have moved forward. Instead of addressing the place psychiatric hospital, it has a different name.
Treatment center.
Treatment centers. And that doesn't really have any stigma. And for instance, in the master plan, even before 2015, there was another strategy that really assigned some sort of tasking to Federal Ministry of Health.
Yes, because I know there was a drug demand and reduction unit
That
also.
is in NDLEA.
That's an NDLA?
Yes, demand reduction, that's the counseling aspect of it. That's advocacy, don't go into this. But the unfortunate one that has already got hooked onto it, he needed an intervention. And in some cases, he needed therapeutic, something that has to do with hospital-based treatment. And that has to be rendered by specialists from the Ministry of Health. Unfortunately, all the facilities have not been expanded over the years. That was the huge gap that some of these charlatans now took advantage of. Because literally, if you had the comment of some of the parents, they are literally saying like, we wanted it that way.
Yeah.
We wanted it that way.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, you really need to identify somebody that has a psycho case and a drug case.
Exactly.
But what we have is, even in the government centers, you call it Arrow Psychiatric Center. Or you now call it Tandari in Meduguri, for instance, for all these recalcitrant children. No, there should be much more better words. Better. We were on a tour of the facility in Saudi Arabia, in Riyadh, with the
You're
president
already
chairman.
stereotyping, those.
Yeah. So that is not, as it were. Hopefully now, the government has really taken charge as to, well, there are gaps, and there will be an intervention. Hoping that, I may not know the content of the Paseda report, but I do know that they've gone around. They must have appraised the crisis situation. And of course, one of the area of gaps is the issue of rehabilitation centers.
Okay, fine. This is my last question for Otumba. We've run out of time, actually. Now, there are concerns that, fine prescribed drugs, of course, there are those prescribed drugs that can be used medically. And if you go to criminalize them, you might deny access to those, who genuinely may need them. Does your committee, or I don't know how to put it now, your committee, did it also take into cognizance the need to, have a policy that can harmonize, both ends, at least to achieve a balanced approach?
Yeah. Nigeria is a very strong country. There's none of these things that is new to Nigerian system. We went around, like you have said, we went to Oshodi, where the narcotic drugs are controlled and all that. And we discovered that they have perfect system in place. Then we asked the question, then how is it that you needed ephedrine, less than 10,000 kg, and you now have over 150 tons? So these are all the things that Paseda's report is addressing, and government in no time will come up with a white paper on who to play what role. Because if you go to our neighboring countries now, there are several containers in hundreds still waiting to come into this country. If we all take tramadol 3 times a day, we have more than 10 years at the port to take.
God.
So how? And these are things that are measured all over the world.
So
from your record of usage for the past how many years, this is what you need for this year. So how is it that we're bombarded with what the whole world needs For 1 year, you bring it to our country.
So what's your final word now? What's your final words to?
My final word is that the government on ground now has the political will and is determined to resolve this issue. Nigerians, please work with this government. We cannot imagine not doing so, the consequence.
Well, Nigeria is a global player, and we are signatory to all the conventions. And in the convention, Nigeria ratified that we are willing and we will make medicine or medical drugs that are medically needed, affordable and accessible to all. So people should not have any fear. Where the crisis is in the chain of distribution of the drugs. And I'm sure that's where the government need to look into, and that is where there will be some changes.
All right, Hamisu Lawan, NDLEA Commander in Charge of Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, many thanks to you. And Otumba Larry Gbimisho, of course, former Director General of NDLEA and a member of Presidential Advisory Committee on the Elimination of Drug Abuse. Thank you very much,
Thank you very
and
much.
thank you for joining me on Late Edition this week.
Thanks for having us.
All right, that's been Late Edition this week, and we've looked at Nigeria drug war and response, and we're positive that, of course, when the committee comes out or the report of the committee is implemented, we will begin to see more positive results in terms of elimination of drug abuse. I am Claire Adilabo Abdul Razak, from me and my production crew. Bye-bye.